Hello, my name's Franz. Welcome to MyBoxingCoach. A really common question I get is, what boxing stance should I use? Now, there's more to this than just being a lefty or a righty. This is about foot position. You've got to consider weight distribution. You've got to consider hand position. There are lots of options, and in this video I'm going to take you through right from sort of the beginner fundamental understanding bit to some of the more advanced considerations that you should have. Now, if you are a beginner, the first bit is really what you should focus on. Watch the second bit, but that's for further down the road. You've really got to master the basics of the basic stance, and then you can start thinking about evolving that. Before we get started, why don't you download your book, The Beginner Boxer Toolkit? 64 pages, packed full of information. You will get amazing insights, the 5 building blocks of power, 7 steps to super speed, how to build out your shadow boxing, the 5 rules of hitting the heavy bag, 10 core boxer skills, how to set up your training session, how to build the right mindset. There's a huge amount in there. There's a link down below, and there will be a link at the end of the video after you've subscribed to this channel. Okay. Let's get started. Right at the outset, are you left-handed? Are you right-handed? So for the 25, 26 years I've been a coach in here, the first thing I do to establish what is the dominant hand, what hand do you write with? And look, 9 out of 10 of them will say they're right hand. That's fine. And then I'll say, what hand do you throw with? Because it has been known for people who write with their right hand to throw with their left hand. And I also ask, what foot do you kick with? Soccer in this country, football is massive, so most of the kids play football. So we work those things out. If you are right-handed, then you stand in what's called the Orthodox stance. And if you're left-handed, you stand in what's called the Southpaw stance. Now, very simple way of getting into this stance. I'll just show you this very quickly. Right leg for Orthodox, take a step back so that your heel is on the same line as your front foot. Pivot your front foot to 45 degrees. Just bend those knees nice and relaxed. Hands up, palms in to bring those elbows in. Rest the chin down, don't force your head down. And come up on the balls of the feet, especially the back foot. Okay, so you've got that little bit of ability to be mobile. For Southpaw, we just switch that round. Left leg, take a comfortable step back. Front foot, 45 degrees. Knees bent. Hands up, palms in, chin down, and just gently on the balls of the feet. Now that is your basic boxing stance. The front foot needs to always be at 45 degrees. You need to get that line going from the toe on the front foot to the heel on the back foot. Your body wants to be side onto the opponent. You don't want to give them a lot of target, and you want to be able to drive lots of rotation for that backhand. Okay? The rear foot, I tend to be quite relaxed. A lot of people get really hung up on the position of the rear foot. You know, should it be parallel? Well, it can be. If your rear foot's parallel, I tend to think that it engages this muscle more, so you can drive maybe more power. If it's off to the side, it tends to engage the muscle at the back of the thigh more, back of the leg more. So I think that's better for mobility. I've seen some boxers, really good boxers, with their back foot pointing slightly backwards. So I'm very relaxed with the position of the rear foot. Front foot must always be 45 degrees. So that's the basics of the stance. Now you need to be able to get into that stance, hold that stance. As you move forward and as you move backwards, you can't afford for the line to do that, to walk the tightrope. You can't afford to, as you go backwards, for your front foot to go pointed. That's a really, really common fault. And it's a really bad fault that you need to make sure doesn't happen. We don't want the front foot pointing towards the opponent. Quickly, I'll explain why. You can do this exercise yourself. Try throwing a right hand and then holding it out. Okay, your body naturally wants to tilt that way. If your front foot's at that position, it's a fantastic way of stopping your combination work. I get that in other combat sports, that's fine. Not in ours. It has to stay at 45 degrees. Now if I do that, I'm absolutely locked in. This provides a lock, it doesn't let me tilt over that way. That's why, okay? That's the basics of the stance. What about stance width? Okay, I tend to think the wider you have the stance, and bear in mind as a boxer, even throughout a single round of boxing, you can vary the width of your stance. Nothing is written in stone, okay? Be versatile. That's the whole point of this video when we get on to the next few steps. The wider the stance, the more control over responsive mobility you have, so you can do these little movements in and out, and you're much quicker. There's a trade-off, of course. The wider the stance, the less power you can generate on that rear hand. And of course you drop a little bit of height, but that's not a problem. Don't get caught up in those type of things, you know, it's all fine. So that's the stance width. Okay, so let's start thinking about the slightly more advanced things. So if you're a beginner, you can stop there and work on that stuff we've just done. You know, work on slight little movements left, little movements right, forwards, backwards, all of these little things, just to make sure that you've got you've mastered the stance. Let's get a little bit more advanced now. What about a squared stance? What about when we open up the legs a lot more? Okay, so you're the opponent, you're looking at me. Okay, well, a squared stance is really effective for close range. It allows you to generate more power with hooks and uppercuts. You can square it really squared off. You can sort of go from Southpaw, Orthodox to Southpaw and back again. But at long range, what's the trade-off? We talked about the trade-off with the wide stance. The trade-off here is the more square your stance is, the less mobility you have. You're not as mobile. I happen to value being mobile really high up the tree. Okay, we can square the stance, generate the power, get back into that bladed stance. So a more square stance equals less mobility but greater power with hooks. Then what about weight distribution? Well, generally, most of the time, especially with beginners, I tend to coach the weight being either central or on the rear leg. But think about weight in three ways: on the rear leg, central, on the front leg. Now look at how subtle the variation is between those weights. Rear leg, central, front leg. Right? Now all of my body weight isn't on the front leg, but the majority is. The rear leg, when your body weight's on the rear leg and slightly central, that's a more defensive posture. When your body weight's on the lead leg, that's a more offensive posture, right? So you've got these three weight distributions that you can vary through any given round, or do a round of shadow boxing, think about your weight being on the back leg. Or what about guard position? So you can go the sort of classic Eastern European way. Rear hand, rear hand always there, lead hand nice and high, and that lead hand can, you know, pop in and out, right? Lead hand high, or in that rear foot position, you can have that lead hand low, right? It's safer at that range because you're able to just be on the edge. Now what matters is experience and knowing to the centimetre where you are in relation to your opponent. So you can drift back. It really helps in getting the opponent to trigger and throw shots at you. So it's really about triggering the opponent, dangling the bait, and then striking them. Now the same principle can be for the central, body weight on the central. Lead hand high, again you're in a slightly more offensive posture, or lead hand low. But listen, by having the lead hand low when your body weight's on the central compared to on the rear, even that slight variation, see the way my body weight's just going back, my risk is greater here than it is here. It's only a tiny amount, but throughout a fight the risk profile goes up and down, right? So rear leg, low hand, high hand, central, low hand, high hand. Rear leg, central. Just think about that risk profile. What about the front leg? Offensive. So on the front leg, body weight slightly forward, hands in a double guard position. Now this is really, when you watch someone like Vasyl Lomachenko, this is really a big part of his boxing style. Body weight on the front leg, urging the opponent to throw the shot. He's in an offensive posture, but he's got them hands up nice and high. And when the hands come up, this part of the hand comes up to the top of my forehead, and I'm watching. So I don't want to go, because I can't see a thing. So the hands come up high, and I'm watching for shots coming. So I can close the hands up, hooks come round, I can block there, hooks come round there, I can block there, hooks into the body, I can block there, hooks that side, I can block there. It's all about visibility. But that's a really assertive style of boxing. Body weight on the front leg, guards up in the high position. You can put pressure on, you can get the opponent to work really hard, and you're in a position to always fire back. Okay, oh, we might as well cover it. What about front leg and hands down? You know, there is a style of boxing where people will do this. And again, great if you're at long range, if your body weight's central. Okay. As soon as you get into mid-range or close range, for me, them hands have got to be up. You know, boxers will do this, regardless of what I coach them. Sometimes boxers will do this. This is them finding themselves, and you know, I don't particularly want to curtail that, but you've got to understand the risk with it. What about front leg, hands down? There's only two boxers I can really think of who did that. The late great Muhammad Ali. You know, and he's on his front leg, and he's always looking to get into that position so he can throw that backhand. His body weight on his front leg, then backhand. And Mayweather's another one who does it, and he'll do it sort of that way, you know, but being quite assertive. Right, there's a lot in there. You can go back and watch that. There's lots going on in that video, lots to understand, lots to think about in terms of how you configure your boxing stance and what options you have. Don't forget and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. And if you really want to get things moving, download the book, The Beginner Boxer Toolkit. Book link here, subscription link here. Look after yourself. I'll see you in the next video.